What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? You are now watching Juke Boy Sports Show. I'm your host, Kyng Ralph, doing the solo dolo show today. But hope everybody's doing good out there in TV land. But before we get started, gotta do the usuals. If you want to book a podcast like what you're watching, photo shoots, music videos, call the number on the bottom of the screen, 707 Fitboxer. And if you're looking for a clean, jitterless energy drink, just get on your phone, your laptop, iPads, all that. Type in dubby.com, w.com. Use promo code JUKJUKE for 20% off. And then make sure you follow all of the socials, like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff. Trying to get to 100 subscribers on both Facebook or followers on Facebook. Trying to get to 50 subscribers by the end of the year on Twitch, 100 subscribers on YouTube. Go on Facebook and YouTube, type in JUK Network, Juke Network. I will soon be taking the He Say, She Say channel, everything and all of that content over to Juke Network. Try to keep things a little bit more uniform. Make sure you go and you follow us at Juke Sports Show on Instagram. Follow me at KYNG on Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, at an underscore for extra Twitter. And let's jump into it, man. I was watching Gil's Arena and it got me thinking. And Gil is so stuck on the idea of, like, Zach Edey, for example. Zach Edey played at Purdue for 4 years, was 22 years old when he was, now that he's a rookie. He knows that teams and him would rather have the 18-year-old and let them develop by the time, let's just say, for instance, right now, Zach Edey's averaging around 11-6 with 20 minutes. So if we give an 18-year-old who is averaging, let's just say he's averaging like 6-3, in theory, you would think by the time he is 22, he would average more. But I think there's more things that go along to that story that don't get told. And it's for years, if you follow the podcast, I always talk about context, the context of things. Now, if I go and I say that within 20 minutes, now if I look at Zach Edey's per 36, where if they take what he averages in 20 minutes, calculated to where if he played 36 minutes, which is what a typical NBA starter would play, what would he average? And those are the things for me that I like to have those nuances within the conversation of what's going on. And I think, so it leads to the question, how important is age when you're scouting a player? And I feel like it plays a role, but it shouldn't be the end all be all. Like if a player fits what you're trying to do, if a player fits, or if a player is just good. Zach Edey, for no rhyme or reason, should have been the third center taken at his position. It just didn't make sense how dominant he was in college, his size, skill set. But given some of the teams that picked before him or picked before the Grizzlies ended up picking him, I just don't understand why he slid that far. 7'4", rim protector, has a soft touch around the rim, can hit the mid range, has shown the ability to hit the 3-point jump shot. And so when you start to have those conversations, it's like, I'm not going to take Buddy that played at UConn over him, which ultimately that's what the Blazers ended up doing. But when you start to look at these teams that made some of these same decisions, for instance, that's why they are where they are. Atlanta Hawks. That's why they are where they are. Wizards, that's why they are where they are. Blazers, for instance. And so when you get someone like Zach Edey, who you already have Ja, you got Desmond Bane, you got Scottie Pippen Jr., Jaren Jackson Jr., and all you really need is that 5 since you lost Adams. He fits perfectly in with what they're trying to build over there in Memphis. And so I feel like when you really start to have that conversation, I think fit Talent level should be one, fit, and then if it's that close between some players, I probably would take the younger one because you'll be able to squeeze a little bit more juice out of that orange. Given that, for instance, like in the NBA right now, you're looking at about a 15-year career if he pans out. Now, regardless if he pans out or not, looking at about 3 to 4 years. But at that point, what we're looking is like we're looking for this person to be a centerpiece for 10 to 15 years. And I just don't like the whole thing of like, I'm going to go with the younger player because it's going to work out, or I can put a little bit more development into it. And I very much disagree with that point. And so another person that was taken, and I said from the beginning that it was going to be one of those things where we dealt with very much like what I just got done talking about. Anthony Richardson gets drafted. Now Anthony Richardson is 6'4", 240, runs a 4'4", 4'5", has a rocket of an arm, but doesn't have that many starts. Doesn't have the mechanics, the accuracy to back all of that up. We're in year two, halfway through year two, he gets benched. Doesn't play for 2 games, comes back, and I know it was against the Jets, but it just was a good sign to see him look competent. He was 20 for 30 in pass attempts, had 272, 275 around that. Passing yards, about 30 to 50 rushing yards, had 3 touchdowns in total, 1 interception, and he looked good. Had a 75 QB rating, and it leads to the question, do you expect him to trend up from here? And for me, going into it, back to the point that I led with, I said from the beginning, give him 2 years of development. By year 3 is where I would expect him to make some kind of jump and solidify whether or not he can play in this league or not. In this game, I know it was against the Jets. He looked good. He looked accurate. He trusted his eyes. The mechanics were there. I think this benching was a little bit of a wake-up call. There were some things of like, all right, when you're a top 5 pick, you would expect to be able to get that a longer leash. But then there's just certain things that when you're the guy, you just can't do. You can't tap yourself out because you're tired. Audible to a run play. Dig deep and just, it is what it is. Cam Newton spoke on it. And as a running quarterback, I get it because there's a certain skill set that like a Peyton Manning and Tom Brady just aren't, they're not going to run 50, 60 yards down the field and then have to get right back to the line to do another play. And that's the thing here is that when you're the quarterback of the franchise guy, you just got to do it. And I think that this here was a wake-up call, him being benched for 2 games. He came in, albeit the New York Jets, but he looked good. I liked what I saw. I went back and I just recently watched today. I was watching every offensive snap that he took, and there were some iffy plays early in the beginning in the first quarter, early second quarter, but during that second quarter, third quarter, especially in the fourth quarter, he started to look a lot more comfortable within the offense, checking in and out of plays, taking what the defense was giving him. On that final drive, I think he threw for about 56 yards on that final drive and had eventually got a run play, bulldozed somebody and ran in and got the touchdown. So I think I would like to see a lot more of this, but just take this the rest of this year. Now, if you go back and you actually look, they don't have the best record, but him as the starting quarterback, I think he's about 5-1 in the past 6 games as a starting quarterback. And so I expect him to trend up. He has the talent to do it. Shane Steichen is a hell of an offensive mind. So I would expect him to trend up. But like I said, he is a project at the end of the day. So I would like to see him finish out strong in the year, but then next year would be the year where I would pick the Colts to be able to do some real damage, given he has weapons. And then another person that got a little bit too long of a leash, my personal opinion, Daniel Jones was benched. They bring in Tommy DeVito. Whenever I hear that name, man, I just think of gold chains and chest hairs, big Italian guy. But he's from Jersey, played at Syracuse, and now he's playing he's the starting quarterback for the New York Giants. He was their starter last year when Daniel Jones got hurt, and he had some pretty decent games. But to get back to Daniel Jones, what took so long? Gotta take some of my coffee. I really don't understand it. Some of these decisions that they made, letting Saquon go, giving Daniel Jones $40 million. And that's a conversation that we got to have too at a later time. I understand the going rate for something is the going rate. The price is the price. But there has to be some kind of ranking system to where Trevor Lawrence isn't the highest paid quarterback at the time. Now Dak is. But Dak, Trevor Lawrence, Tua to a certain degree, and Daniel Jones should not all be some of the highest paid quarterbacks when Pat Mahomes isn't the highest paid quarterback. Lamar is not the highest paid quarterback. Josh Allen's not the highest paid quarterback. And Joe Burrow to a certain degree. It's Joe Burrow. I believe Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence are making the same exact amount of money. And that's, for me, is where I feel like there has to be some kind of tier list where, like, Brock Purdy is about to be up for his bag. I'm not paying Brock Purdy $50 million. I haven't seen $50 million worth of quarterback out of him. And that's me personally. But to get back to it, Daniel Jones in the last 2 years is 3-14. I think he's like 24-44 in total. And just terrible, man. Like I don't get it. I don't understand. How do you let Saquon go in favor of him? You don't really, and then when you let Saquon go, you don't, outside of drafting Malik Neighbors, you don't really give him any kind of like legit weapons. The offensive line has been a problem since Eli Manning was still the starter. You don't bring in another high quality running back to even be a poor man Saquon, and all you have is Malik Neighbors. So it's like you don't even necessarily give them weapons for him to work with. And I feel bad for Dayball. I think that by the end of the year, he's going to end up being the fall guy. They're probably going to try to draft a new quarterback, bring in someone else, which I think if you're going to go with a new quarterback, give Brian Dayball an opportunity, because he showed you he was able to get to a playoffs and win a playoff game with Daniel Jones. And so ultimately the question is, why did it take so long? And I'm glad to see it. I hate to see the downfall of someone, but as a sports fan, a person that is working and putting on my analyst hat, it just didn't make no sense for them to let go of Saquon, give Daniel Jones $40 million when his sample size he has enough of a sample size to know whether or not this is your franchise guy or somebody that you need to give up on. After year two, I remember after year one, I did defend him. But by year two, I definitely was like, yeah, he's not that guy. You're just not that guy, my boy. And so Jets, as I alluded to, lose to the Indianapolis Colts. Then Anthony Richardson, they fire their GM, Joe Douglas. They just fired their coach earlier in the season, Robert Saleh. And you can tell there's a reboot, a rebuild that's about to happen. Do you expect Aaron Rodgers to be there next year? And I do expect Aaron Rodgers to be there next year, but I do expect his replacement to be on the team next year as well. I think that if you do decide to have Aaron Rodgers back, whether it be first, second, or third round, I believe you need to get your quarterback of the future. whether it be free agency or drafting or some kind of trade. You need to get a quarterback of the future and give them a year to sit behind Aaron Rodgers, learn from him the good, the bad, what not to do, what you should do, and go from there. Now, when it comes to the rest of the teams, I do feel like their defense, they have pieces. There's no reason outside of Aaron Rodgers is not playing up to par why their team is so bad. You got Devontae Adams, you got Garrett Wilson. I forget the young running back, but you got Brees Hall, a slew of defensive weapons. Sauce, Quentin Williams, his brother at linebacker, and then Hassan Reddick is now playing. I think you have weapons to move forward to where you should be a playoff team if the quarterback was playing better football. And so I expect him to be there, but he's definitely at that point where he's a bridge quarterback. And so there was a couple big victories over the weekend. The Baltimore Ravens fall to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and 18. They lost 16-18, and then the Buffalo Bills beat the Kansas City Chiefs 21-30, which was the more impressive victory. I do think it is impressive that the Steelers didn't score any touchdowns and they still won. They scored 6 field goals and were able to get the victory. But I'm going to get into it a little bit later where I feel like the Ravens beat themselves. And so, given that the Chiefs, and I've been talking about it all year, they just find ways to win, regardless of how you look at it, how you feel about it. They find ways to win. They were 9-0 going into this game. No number one receiver, no number two receiver. They get D-Hop, having Xavier Worthy. They still got Kelsey. They lose their number one running back, bring in Kareem Hunt. Defense is playing well, and they just find ways to win games. And some of the turnovers that the Chiefs had, two interceptions by Mahomes, they just weren't able to overcome it. And Josh Allen's played his way to where now Vegas has him as the favorite for the MVP. And the defense had a heck of a game too. Defense had 2 sacks, 2 picks. Khalil Shakir was the number one receiver in this game, 8 receptions for 70 yards. And then Josh Allen had a heck of a game, 320 yards total, 2 touchdowns. And they did what they needed to do in order to get this victory. And this was just one of those games where the talent was good enough to where the Chiefs just weren't able to do just enough to get to overcome their shortcomings. They were able to do it against the Bucs. This just isn't that, like, the Bills are just a much better football team. They're definitely, between them, the Ravens, the Chiefs, I would expect one of those 4 teams to be the team that would represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. And so, as a Chiefs fan, I know I got all this red on, but I'm representing my Blackhawks because it's hockey season. So, but it was good to see them lose. I'm happy that they finally got a loss on their record. And so, shout out to the Bills. But in the end, I do think that, like I mentioned, I do believe the Ravens will fix things. Lamar is going to end up, was still my pick to win the MVP. So I do think that overall he's going to end up being that, getting back into the if he isn't still, to me personally, I feel like he's done enough to where he's still in first place for the MVP voting. But given the talent that Josh Allen is throwing to, if he has them with enough victories, ultimately I think it's between him, Lamar, and Jared Goff. Whoever is playing some of the best football with the best record is going to end up getting the MVP. And so, switching over to the 2-minute drill, although it is the 2-minute drill, I am talking about basketball. Chet Holmgren suffered a hip injury a couple weeks ago, about a week ago, honestly. I think it was on November 10th he suffered that injury, and a little over a week. And so, how much will the Thunder miss him? I think in the grand scheme of things, they need him in order for them to have long-term playoff success. I do think that they have good enough coaching, good enough players, and enough defensive versatility where they're going to play this small ball lineup that's going to give a lot of people problems because one, they'll be able to switch quick hands, quick feet, be able to stay in front of people, make people shoot over them, while also they can switch. They'll be able to score, put up points. Jalen Williams, Dort has shown to be a comparable shooter. You got Caruso, and then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being able to go off for 50 almost every night, or any given night, not almost every night, but any given night he can go off for 50. And I think that in the long haul, I think he's going to miss about 6 to 10, or I think it's 8 to 10 weeks. He's going to miss about 8 to 10 weeks. And I do think in the end he's going to end up being able to get to they'll be able to sustain it. Right now they're looking at, I think they're about 3-1 right now. They are playing the San Antonio Spurs as we speak, and it was halftime when the show started, so I haven't got a chance to check in on that score. But in the end, I do think that, and shout out to my boy, but in the end, I do think they'll be good enough to where they'll be able to sustain this. I don't think that they'll go from, like, right now they're first in their division. I don't see them dropping significantly within that time period unless there's another major injury that happens. But I do think that the Thunder, in the end, are going to be good. They'll be able to withstand. It's not going to be as bad as you would think, given the talent that Chet Holmgren is, because of how deep the team is, but also the defensive versatility that some of those other players coming off the bench will offer. And so Cowboys getting smacked once again on Monday Night Football. And there's all this talk of Dion, his sons, Shador, Shiloh, and then now his third son, adopted son, essentially, Travis Hunter, all going into the draft. With those players leaving, whether or not he'll be able to hold up the success going into next season, should he make the jump to the NFL, and how bad the Cowboys are, there's no way Mike McCarthy is coming back. But me personally, bro, stop trying to put that dumpster fire on Dion. I don't think that Dion and who he is as a coach and what he likes as a culture, I genuinely believe him when he says he doesn't want to make that jump to the NFL. I think that when it comes to a certain way that the NFL player, because they are a paid athlete and they're making all these millions, that if you don't want to put the work in, given the player that he was, how much film he watched, and the work that he put in, I genuinely believe him when he says that he doesn't want to coach in the NFL. But also, let's just entertain the thought. Do you really think Dion can handle Jerry Jones overseeing everything that he does? The last time they had a coach that was able to really stand up to him was Bill Parcells. How did that go? It didn't work out. Person before that was Jimmy Johnson, and he got him out of there just to hire someone else to prove that, I can win a Super Bowl without Jimmy Johnson, and hasn't done it since I was 6 or 7 years old. And so, yeah, stop trying to put that dumpster fire of an organization in them Dallas Cowboys on Deion Sanders. No, I genuinely believe he's going to stay in Colorado. I would much rather him move to Florida State if he's going to stay in college, which I genuinely believe he will. But stay where you're at. You have a good team. You've built an actual program over there in Colorado. They're 8-2 right now. There's a possibility they can get the number 2 quarterback in high school coming in the next year as a freshman, because he just decommitted from USC. So there's things that are up and up, looking good over there. And so I mentioned it and I alluded to it before, but let me vent. Baltimore Ravens. I don't know. I'm not part of the organization, but I can know enough that when Derrick Henry has less than 17, because really the highest amount in the losses that they've had was 16. So I think he should have no less than 20 carries in a game. But when you go back and you look, stop trying to reinvent the wheel. When they win and they win handily, Derrick Henry has about 20 to 25 carries, and Lamar Jackson has 20 to 25 pass attempts. The moment that you start to get Lamar over that 30 pass attempt threshold and Derrick Henry starts to get that 15 to 17 rush attempts, that's when you start to lose. There's no way in hell that you look at this game, you just lost to a team that scored 6 field goals. You look at your stat sheet, Derrick Henry has 13 carries. I understand he had a fumble. But in his career, go look at how many fumbles he has. He's one of the most sure-handed running backs in NFL history. Sometimes things happen. Sometimes a guy puts a hat on the ball pops out. It is what it is. But that doesn't mean at no point were you losing to the point where you needed to go out and throw the ball that many times. Yeah, maybe on that final drive in order to be able to give yourself a chance. You score a touchdown, you come up short. Terrible two-point call. But that's a whole other conversation for another day. But in the end, give Derrick Henry the damn football 20 to 25 times. If you need Lamar to throw the ball over 30 times once Derrick Henry has hit that 20 to 25 threshold, all right, cool. But when it's 13 to 15 carries for Derrick Henry and Lamar got 35 attempts, dropbacks, yeah, that's just not a recipe for success. And when you start to play the Steelers, when you start to play the Bills, the Chiefs, you're going to play the Eagles coming up soon. You're going to play the Chargers next week. They got another matchup with the Browns again. And we saw what happened the last time. That was another example, giving Derrick Henry 13 to 15 carries. We'll see what happened there. And so when you start to get deeper and deeper into playoffs, which is what the goal is, to get to the Super Bowl and win one, he's going to need 20 carries, at least, nothing less than 20 carries. And the defense is not good enough to where you can go out there and just try to gunsling it out. You're going to have to be able to keep some teams off the field and save your defense some possessions by controlling the clock. But thank you all for watching. I do got to get up out of here. I appreciate y'all. Me and my Naruto coffee mug. And yes, I am drinking coffee at 8:30 at night. But like I mentioned before at the beginning of the show, make sure you go like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff. Make sure you go follow Juke Network, JUK Network on Facebook for our updates and content. I am switching everything over from the He Said, She Said channel over to the Juke Network on Facebook. Subscribe at Juke Network as well on YouTube. Make sure you go follow us at JUK Juke Sports Show. And then follow me at KYNG RALPH at Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, at an _ for extra Twitter. And go Knights. Although I got this Blackhawks gear on. I'm from Chicago, but I'm a Vegas boy at this point. But I appreciate y'all. Be out.